Good morning, everyone. It's very difficult for me to conduct an online class right now. The situation is probably going to be improved in the near future, but I'm trying to cover the aspect of cardiac arrhythmia even during this period. So, this is the only probable way by which probably I can cover the initial aspects of cardiac arrhythmia. You need not have to be uh, much cautious about this cardiac arrhythmia. Need not have to be panicky during your examination, and uh, it shouldn't have, this presentation shouldn't have, I don't think it will have any sedative effect on your mind. It's a very interesting topic, and it's all about understanding the subject, and it's the thing called rote uh, kind of rote teaching, or a kind of rote learning is not going to help in this regard. And the cardiac arrhythmia, whenever I am taking these classes, it's basically I'm dividing it into three halves: the physiology, obviously with a little bit of pathology with that, and then comes the clinical aspects of cardiac arrhythmias, and then I am focusing mostly on the pharmacological aspects. But as you are postgraduate, so I will try to intermingle or blend each one of the thing with the other one during each of my presentation, and it is impossible for me to cover the whole aspects of cardiac arrhythmia in single presentation. So let us start with basic definition of cardiac arrhythmia. There is no specific definition. You can define it in a way that it's basically a disturbance of initiation or conduction of cardiac impulse. What does it mean? It means the problem is probably lying at the level of automaticity. That means from where the these pacemaker cells are generating the impulse, or it's lying at the conductivity. That means whenever this thing is probably may arise from somewhere, it is transmitted uh, through a particular channel, and that will be shown in the next slide. And during this transmission, probably these myocardial cells, or when it's transmitting from one cell to another, it's getting some kind of obstruction. So either the problem is lying at the level of automaticity or at the level of conductivity. When I am trying to define it clinically, we used to say that it's probably irregularity of heart rate or rhythm, or even both. So the simplest form of cardiac arrhythmia is tachycardia, where you will see the heart rate is more than 100, and the simplest form of bradyarrhythmia is bradycardia, where you will see the heart rate is less than 60 per minute. Now, whenever this type of things will come, every time you did not have to intervene with the medications. Normal healthy heart not genetically predisposed to arrhythmia. It is usually resistant to minor disturbances like triggers, but sometimes it's becoming symptomatic, sometimes it's becoming fatal. Like in case of ventricular arrhythmias, ventricular tachycardia, ventricular fibrillation, but that doesn't mean that if you are getting a loss of beat, if you are getting some missing beats, and you start prescribing a drug. So those things are basically ventricular ectopics. And whenever we are basically trying to cover this aspect of cardiac arrhythmia, primarily we are focusing on ventricular arrhythmias. But here, as I am taking this the whole context of cardiac arrhythmia for discussion, probably I will try to cover both aspects. That means the supraventricular arrhythmias, which involves AV nodal re-entry, your atrial flutter, atrial fibrillation, paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia. So these are all kinds of atrial arrhythmias or supraventricular arrhythmias. That means those arrhythmias are happening above the level of ventricle. Whereas whenever we are trying to discuss the ventricular arrhythmias, we'll come to the topic of ventricular ectopics. We will come to ventricular fibrillation, ventricular tachycardia, torsades de pointes. So these things will come into the picture when the clinical things are going to be discussed. But before going to the clinical aspect and also the pharmacological aspects, because the pharmacology means the intervention of the pathology, rather, which pathology means it's you are basically having alteration of physiology, cardiac physiology. So before coming to that, let us just have some idea about what are the kind of medications we have. We have some kinds of antifibrillatory drugs which prevent the development of atrial or ventricular fibrillation, and these are usually differentiated from defibrillatory drugs. That means the drugs which are capable of restoring normal sinus rhythm of the heart under atrial or ventricular fibrillation. So most of the drugs or many of the drugs are basically controlling the rate. Few of the drugs are also trying to control rhythm. And our main target is to revert back the normal rate and rhythm in case of cardiac arrhythmia. And whenever we'll discuss physiology, we'll, as I said, we'll try to intermingle it with clinics. So whenever I will try to discuss action potential, a generation of action potential, then probably I will discuss a little bit of ECG with that, so that we can relate action potential with the feature of ECGs. So in this slide you will see a normal ECG. I think all of you know that generation of the P waves, and you see the QRS complex, and then you see the T, and sequentially this P, QRS, T and T waves are going on. And what we are observing here, we are observing that this is basically showing a similar or same gap between two QRS complex. So whatever may be the nature, it will it's basically a kind of a normal ECG. As you see, there are three big blocks are being involved inside these two QRS complex. So the rate is definitely going to be lesser than 100 per minute, and obviously it is above 60. I am not calculating it from here, you can yourself calculate, and it is showing a normal ECG. Now whenever we are talking about the cardiac cells, let us first see how the heart looks like. And here you see the structure of the heart is showing different cells, and it starts with SA node. This one is placed just near superior vena cava, which is responsible for generation of pacemaker, that means pacing cells. They are generating action potentials, and the way they are producing it is probably having the highest rate. It's not probably, they are having the highest rate, and hence the whole heart, the way it is being transmitted, you just see from SA node to it is coming at the AV junctional tissues, via AV junctions to the AV node, it is involving atrium, and then from there onwards it's coming via his Purkinje fibers, involving the endocardium, then the this myocardium, and ultimately it's coming at the level of epicardium. So the way the message is being carried out from SA node, that is followed all over the heart, and it's contracting like a single cell, so that the transmission is happening from cell to cell. There is some kind of connective cells like connexin 43, which is placed between his Purkinje fibers and ventricle, through which the impulse is conducted. So the action potential is probably generated. The action potential generated cells are present in SA node, AV node. Primarily, a few are obviously present in other sites, but the message or the command is being placed by SA node, that is carried out by the whole heart. The normal heart is carrying or following the message is coming from the level of SA node or pacemaker generating cells. So, what are the different kinds of cells which are present in heart? One is excitable cells, which includes the pacemakers such as SA node, conducting tissues such as AV node. Primarily AV node and AV junction tissues are conductive tissues. Even it is present in the bundle of His, but primarily bundle of His is also a conductive tissue, and these parts are basically constitute 30% of cardiac cells. And there are some non-excitable cells, almost 70% of this, and it form the extracellular matrix of collagen and elastin fibers. And the latter, that means the elastin fibers, decide the stretchability and stiffness of cardiac chambers, especially the left ventricular wall. So, we are talking about two kinds of cells, excitable and non-excitable. Here you also have to remember another thing, and the next slide I am going to discuss on that matter. So, the kind of frequency we are maintaining is around 60 to 100 beat per minute, and if it's associated with normal rhythm or even one or two ectopic beats or missing beats, we are calling it a normal cardiac system. Patient is having the person is having a normal cardiovascular function, and intervention is not required, and the patient is showing normal ECG. So, first you have to understand, before understanding cardiac arrhythmia, what is the normal function of heart and what is normal ECG. So, from these slides I think you get an initial idea about what is happening in our cardiovascular system or in the system, conductive system of heart. So, in the next slide you see almost it's a repetition of the same thing. This picture is taken from Goodman, and you see again the same picture is being depicted. The anatomical structure, the way it is being conducted from SA node to the epicardium, and if you placed a lead inside these cells, if it is possible for you to place a kind of electrode in the microelectrode rather into the myocardial cells, you can record action potential. And how the action potentials are looking at different places. You see the kind of the graphical presentation of these action potential in SA node, that means at the top, and AV node are almost similar. So, these two are basically called nodal cells, or rather they are having nodal fibers, and these kind of fibers are also known as slow channel fibers. Why are they called slow channel fibers? Because their depolarization is not dependent on the entry of sodium ion. This is basically dependent on the entry of calcium ion. So, the depolarization at the very initial stage is happening due to the entry of calcium ion, whereas the repolarization on the opposite side at the SA node and AV node is happening due to efflux of potassium ion. So, it is basically in these two sites where the pacemaker cells are operating, depending on two cells. The one is calcium ion and the second one is your potassium ion. Whereas you look at the structure of the atrium and then the His-Purkinje fiber, the endocardium, the mid myocardium and the epicardium, they are looking similar, though few of them are slicker, a few of them are wider because of the nature of the different fibers, but their basic structural configuration or pictorial presentation are almost similar. Why it's so? Because here the depolarization is happening due to entry of sodium ion. Efflux is similar, it is happening due to, the repolarization is happening due to efflux of potassium ion. But these kind of fibers which are present in atrium, Purkinje fibers, your myocardium, epicardium, so in the rest of the places where the pacemaker cells are normally not operating, are having fast channel fibers, FAST, first channel fibers, and these fast channel fibers are primarily depending on the entry of sodium ion. So here the sodium ion is responsible for the depolarization, whereas exit of potassium ion or efflux of potassium ion is responsible for its repolarization. So at the very beginning we have classified myocardial fibers or myocardial cells into two types: the slow channel, which are primarily the nodal, present in the nodal fibers, that means at the SA node and AV node, depending on the entry of calcium, not on sodium, whereas in other places like atrium, in the His-Purkinje fibers, in the ventricles, endocardium, epicardium, myocardium, you will see it's having the first channel fibers, and depolarization is primarily depending on the entry of sodium ions. So this is the way we can differentiate between the action potential at different sites. Now if you look at normal ECG, as I told you already that you people are the postgraduate students, so I will intermingle this clinical observation of a person with the physiological system of heart. So I will tell you the nature of physiological phenomenon which is being manifested by different ECG features. So let's start with the beginning of P wave. Just at the beginning of P wave, you will see the impulse is generating from SA node. That means it's basically, you will observe, if you place an electrode at that point, you will probably observe the kind of action potential which is observed at SA node. Then comes the P wave. Now whenever there is any change in P wave clinically, think about mitral stenosis, we are talking about left atrial hypertrophy, because atrium is contracting and it's not being able to pump adequate amount of blood in the left ventricle. So because this valves are stenosed, hence what happened, we'll see there is a change in the structure of P wave. It may happen at the level of height or at the level of width. Usually it's when we think it as a pathological one when it crosses around 3 to 5 millimeter. So both in width and amplitude we are seeing there is a change in P wave. What does it indicate physiologically? It indicates that P wave is basically nothing but showing atrial depolarization. It has no relationship with the ventricles, rather it is only and only the atrial depolarization. So any problem at the level of P wave will indicate a problem at the level above ventricle. That means a kind of problem is happening, is basically supraventricular in nature. So P wave depicts atrial depolarization physiologically, and even atrial depolarization is complete even before the ventricular depolarization starts. So P wave is nothing but all about atrial depolarization. Now some P to R. R means at the top, QRS complex. At the top you will see the one when the spike is at the top, it is the R. So if you draw two vertical lines at the level of P and at the level of R, it is called PR interval. This PR interval, from the previous slide, you know that impulse is generated at the level of SN node and this being carried from there via its conductive pathway to AV node, and ultimately it's reaching ventricle via his Purkinje fibers. So PR interval is only indicating AV nodal conduction. So from SA node to AV node, AV junctional tissue, this conductive pathway is manifested or being indicated by PR interval. And at the beginning of Q wave, we are seeing that it's showing the conduction time at the level of ventricles. So whenever the Q starts, it starts with ventricular depolarization. So ventricular depolarization is carried out QR S complex, and when in the next slide we'll show you the ventricular repolarization, the phenomenon that is not manifested by QRS complex, that is only manifested by the T wave. The T wave is almost looking like P wave, a little bit bigger than P wave, and it is happening at the end of one specific ECG features. So P followed by QRS, which is showing ventricular depolarization, and is completed with ventricular repolarization, that is the T wave. Then there is a gap, and following the gap is basically the diastolic phase, or is the phase of diastolic depolarization, and then there is a beginning of another P wave, and again you see a QRS complex followed by a T wave. So it's going on. Now the thing is, it is as it's been manifested in this figure of Goodman. You can understand what is P, what is Q, what is R, S and T. But sometimes we are mentioning one term as QT interval. QT interval in terms of cardiac physiology is nothing but a measure of the duration of action potential. So it's basically APD. It has no relationship with absolute refractory period or effective refractory period or relative refractory period. QT interval only indicates APD, that means action potential duration. That means from, if you look at the above structure, from the beginning of, if you look at the SA node, so at the beginning of this depolarization to the end of repolarization, it is basically action potential duration. Similarly, in case of first channel fibers, you look at the ventricular fibers or the Purkinje fibers, from where the its overshooting is happening, from there to the end of this is basically showing action potential duration, that is QT interval. So again I am repeating the whole thing once more so that you can understand the basic nature of a normal ECG. The beginning, just at the beginning of P wave, we are seeing the generation of impulse, and that is showing the activity of SA node. The P wave itself indicates atrial depolarization. PR interval is indicating AV nodal conduction. QRS is showing conduction time in the ventricles, was basically depicting ventricular depolarization. T wave is depicting ventricular repolarization, whereas from Q to T, if you draw two vertical lines and join that, it's showing in this figure, this QT interval is a measure of action potential duration. So this is about the basic correlationship with the physiology, with the clinical feature of a normal ECG and its physiological function. So what happened in a polarized cell, you see the direction of potassium ion is showing in the both sides, It's demarcated by a yellow and a purple line. The yellow is showing it is going in favor of the electrical gradient, whereas the purple line is showing that it is moving in the direction of the concentration gradient. Whereas in case of sodium ion, almost always it is going in the same direction, and it is going in the same direction because both concentration gradient and electrical gradient is showing the similar direction for this particular ion. Normally what happens, sodium ions are concentrated extracellularly and potassium ions are present intracellularly. Normally or ordinarily, this would lead to the diffusion of these ions across the cell's membrane along their concentration gradients and to equalization of concentration on its two sides. So, the diffusion is however opposed by the membrane sodium potassium pump, that you have seen while seeing the myocardial cells when you are trying to explain the role of digoxin. You know the 3 sodium ions are going outside and as a replacement 2 potassium ions are coming inside. So basically it's an active pump and it is always working, whether the heart is in the depolarized state or in the polarized state, it's always in the active phase, and actively it pushes sodium ions out of the cell and potassium ions into the cell. For every 3 sodium ions pushed outside the cell, the pump pushes 2 potassium ions inside the cell, and the pump is therefore electrogenic in nature. The sodium potassium pump operates continuously, and always remember it does not switch on and off during the action potential of the cardiac cell because it's a energy dependent process. During the diastole, more potassium ions leave the cell than in comparison to the sodium ions that enter inside the cell. So what happens? Therefore, there is a difference in the membrane. It is happening due to the difference in the membrane permeability, and therefore there is a net loss of positive charge because more potassiums are leaving the cell and the sodium ions are not entering in that manner. Hence, there is a net loss of positive charges from the cell during the diastole. And inside the cell, we all know that it is filled up with the chlorine ions, that means the anions, and the proteins. It's a bigger structure, so it cannot leave the cell because of their structure, their size, as well as they cannot leave the cell because the electrical gradient is not showing any kind of help to these kind of ions. Hence, this cell inside the cell, myocardial cell, remains negative in comparison to the outside, and the cell membrane is said to be in the polarized state. So this is the basic phenomenon which we are observing at the level of or at the at the yes, it's at the level of diastolic depolarization, or where we are observing resting membrane potential. Now, in the next one, where we are seeing 3 cylinder-like cellular patterns, what we are observing is basically the entry of sodium ion, which is happening only in the first channel fibers. So at the level of ventricle, His-Purkinje fibers or atrium. The 3 states are being depicted. The closed one, C stands for closed, then the open one and the inactivated one. So there are 2 gates, the outer gate which is open in the closed state, and then this closed state is also called the resting state. The inactivated gate is it has no role to play at that moment because the outside is closed, The cross sign is depicting that obliquely it's being placed, so sodium ions can't come inside. And then from there in the middle you see the gate is open and it is called the open state. And when we'll show you the action potential, in the previous slide you were seeing some kind of action potential being depicted in fast channel fibers due to the entry of sodium. The initial spike, that means the zero phase depolarization, is happening at the level of open state where the sodium ions are coming inside the cell. And then once the sodium entry is complete, this lower gate or the inactivation gate, it started operating. And in the third one, the cylindrical pattern, you see it is closed from downwards. So the inactivated gate is closed, it is called the inactivated state, and from there it is again going back to the closing state. So when it is coming at the level of inactivation state, not all the sodium channels are operating at the same time. Probably at the beginning you will see the 25% of the cells are inactivated, then probably the 50%, then probably you will see the 100% of the cells are inactivated. And at that point, when the 100% of sodium channels are inactivated, you will see a complete ventricular repolarization. So the depolarization is observed at the open state, that is the ventricular depolarization, whereas ventricular depolarization is showing at the end when the 100% of the sodium channels are inactivated. With that, we'll see the potassium efflux current is also started operating, and this function of potassium is finished at the bottom. So in the next slide, probably we'll try to explain this phenomenon in a better manner. So here in this slide we are seeing that the sodium current, the phase of depolarization, and I had already shown you 3 states of sodium. This is basically a manifestation of the whole thing in a fast channel fibers. So basically the atrium, the ventricles, and the His-Purkinje fibers, we are seeing this kind of feature. But this kind of action potential is never going to be observed in SA node or AV node. So at the beginning you see there is a sodium current where it is coming at the level of open state, and the phase of depolarization may vary, the automaticity may vary even in different fast channel fibers. Then you see the calcium current, it is of different types, L type and T type. The L type is probably operating at the phase 2 most of the times. Inward rectifier potassium current, which is operating at the level of resting membrane potential, mostly at the level of phase 4, that is inward rectifier current depicted by IK1. And the outward current, that is depicted by 3 different genes, are basically showing the efflux of potassium at the level of phase 3. As I said before, the pacemaker current is only primarily seeing in the level of SA node. So you see funny channel is there's a sodium channel operating at that level, and it is just the beginning of P wave. So here in ECG you will see it's happening at the beginning of P wave, and throughout the P wave you will see these kind of changes. That means the whatever is happening due to entry of sodium ions. And then the sodium calcium exchanger, which is operating side by side with sodium potassium ATPase system. So if you block sodium potassium ATPase system, parallelly the sodium calcium exchanger mechanism is also going to be stopped. In the normal heart, only SA node and AV node are usually capable of spontaneous depolarization. That means that is a generation of an action potential without external stimulation. But sometimes discharge may happen from His-Purkinje fibers. It has its own potential. It sometimes is also happened at the level of ventricle. And as I said, the discharge in SA node at 70 per minute is faster in comparison to AV node, that is 45, around 45 per minute. And therefore the SA node is called, or it acts as a pacemaker. So whatever I have said is being depicted in this figure, and initially we are seeing how the first channel fibers are operating, and then we'll see how the nodal fibers, the nodal cells in SA node and AV node, the different cells are working. So this is the resting membrane potential, and resting membrane potential is primarily depending on potassium ions, which I already mentioned while discussing the polarized state of a cardiac cell. And as you know that the inside the cell, it's remaining negative, but the chlorine and proteins are not playing any major role because they cannot permeate through it. The diffusion is not possible with these ions. So the resting membrane potential is primarily depending on the potassium ions, and whether the potassium ion will go outside or it's coming inside will completely dependent on the electrochemical and concentration gradient of the myocardial cells. So here the potential is coming from minus 90 to a particular level. It is going towards positive side. Probably it's reaching in the first channel fibers at the level of minus 70 or something like that, and that is called the threshold potential. In the atrial and ventricular cells, sometimes the intracellular negativity starts around minus 80, and from there suddenly you see the spike, and this spike is showing that it is the sodium ion is open. That means this is the open state of sodium channels. Sodium ions are coming inside, and the phase of depolarization, that is called phase 0, is manifested. Now in this phase, most of the times is only seen in case of fast channel fibers, that means in atrium, in ventricle, in His-Purkinje fibers. This is not the phenomenon being observed in the nodal cells. Those are completely depending on the entry of calcium. So the look or the feature of that action potentials are going to be different. So this is the entry of sodium ion, and the way I have depicted 3 different types of sodium channels. This is basically called the open state. This is the open state, and you see the sodium ions are coming inside, and once it is reaching its peak, then the sodium ions channels are going to be closed by the inactivated gate, or the inactivated state will appear, but it is not possible just at the beginning. Rather, it is manifested by phase 1, and phase 1 is also happening due to entry of, or rather exit of, not entry, it's an exit of potassium ion. So phase 1 is basically happening due to partial inactivation of the sodium channels. You see the sodium channels are closed, the yellow colored sodium channels, whereas these pinkish potassiums are little bit, the potassium efflux currents are also operating here. So it's basically showing the phase 1, and then in the next phase, that is called the plateau phase, characterized by partial inactivation of sodium channels. Probably in the phase 1 it is 25%, in the next phase hypothetically it is around 50%, and the entry of calcium ion. So you see in the lowermost channels the calcium ions are coming inside, and that is called plateau phase. Now this calcium channel, which is depicted here in the first channel fibers, is responsible for phase 0. in the SA node and AV nodal cells. In phase 3, that means the phase which is characterized by almost complete inactivation of sodium channels, is characterized by repolarization of these cells as well as the efflux of potassium ions. So almost 100% of sodium channels are going to be inactivated at the end of this phase 3 and at the beginning of phase 4. This phase 4 is called the phase of diastolic depolarization. So it's basically happening at the level of, at the time of diastole. And whatever the phenomenon you are observing it in a cardiac cell which is bounded by a lipoprotein membrane, and it has receptor channels crossing it. And these are all ion selective membrane spanning proteins which permit the passive movement of the ions like sodium, potassium, calcium, and down their electrochemical gradient, mostly during the open state, but not during the closed state of any one of the channels. The ion channels, the same ion channels are also operating in the gap junction. When the conduction is happening from one level to another, from AV junction tissue to His Purkinje or from His Purkinje to ventricle, the same channels are operating. So the same mechanism is operating everywhere and they are working in a synchronized pattern. So that is the most important thing related to these action potentials. So the repolarization phase is being depicted with this feature, and you see that this is basically the ventricular depolarization and ventricular repolarization, which ultimately indicates APD, that means the completion of an action potential, that is called the action potential duration. In ECG it is manifested as QT interval, whereas phase 0, phase 1, phase 2, rather the phase 0 itself is mostly depicted by QRS complex, whereas this phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3, the completion of this repolarization is depicted by your T wave in the ECG. Now again these cells are closed, and now we are trying to observe what is happening at the level of SA node and AV node, where the operating channels are nothing but the calcium dependent action potential. So here you see the green line is indicating that probably it's happening, this overshoot or this phase of phase 0 is happening above the level of or beyond the level of these positive voltage, which is basically happening at the level of fast channel fibers. So you see the nature of this depolarization is different, and this green line is indicating that it is completely depending, this upshoot is showing phase 0, it is completely depending on the entry of calcium ion. Sodium ion has no role to play in these places. Is followed by the phase called repolarization, and this repolarization is obviously depending on the inactivation of calcium ions and efflux of potassium. So both in fast and slow channel fibers, the role of repolarization is definitely partially depending on the efflux of potassium. That is common, but depolarizations are different. In case of fast channel fibers, you will see depolarization is depending on the sodium channels, whereas in case of SA node and AV node, either in the nodal fibers where the pacemaker cells are operating, you will see it's happening due to entry of calcium. And you also can notify that it is basically lesser than these the phase 4 in the fast channel fibers. So different types of action potentials are observed in different places, and its physiological explanation is given during the initial presentation of these cells. Now this is basically a myocardial cell. It is present in the polarized state, and here you will observe that the 3 sodium ions are going outside and 2 potassium ions are coming inside, and this is also having a, it's always active. I mean, in the polarized or in the depolarized state, as it's a ATP dependent process, it's always active, and it is always related with the sodium calcium exchanger mechanism. So if by any means, by giving any drug like digoxin, if you stop this sodium potassium ATPase system, then the sodium calcium exchanger mechanism is also going to be stopped, and this will lead to calcium overload inside the cell. So this cell is indicating basically what is happening during resting membrane potential, or what is happening at the level of diastolic depolarization, or what is happening at the level of phase 4, and that is the reason why I have placed this picture from Goodman in this presentation. Now I am concluding a part of the initial part of my presentation with this basic understanding of the medications used in ventricular arrhythmias, because in arrhythmia in undergraduate curriculum or by term cardiac arrhythmia, whenever the people will ask you questions, even the postgraduate people, they will ask you questions primarily on ventricular arrhythmia, and these classifications of drugs are called Vaughan-Williams-Sings classifications. Few of the drugs are placed beside this, that means they are also anti-arrhythmic drugs, but they are not falling in the category of Vaughan-Williams-Sings classification. So those drugs are digoxin, adenosine, magnesium, this kind of drugs. But from your knowledge of physiology, you need not require any kind of support. Now you know that there are some drugs which are definitely going to work at the level of nodal cells to primarily control, if you are talking about the cardiac arrhythmias, or at the level of phase 2 where the calcium ions are coming inside, because calciums are playing its key role in both the fibers. In fast channel fibers, it is showing its action at the level of plateau phase, that's phase 2, whereas in slow channel fibers, in AV node and SA node, it is showing the depolarization, that means phase 0. So the drugs which probably will have inhibitory action on the calcium channels definitely have some action on the arrhythmia, whatever may be the nature, ventricular or supraventricular. So those drugs are categorized under Vaughan-Williams-Sings classification. It is coming under class 4 drugs, and those drugs are called calcium channel blockers. Now calcium channel blockers are usually of 3 types, as you know: phenylalkylamine derivative, that is verapamil, and the diltiazem. These two are primarily having more effect on heart rather than blood vessels, having cardiodepressant action because it's preventing the entry of calcium. Most of the times it is absolutely contraindicated in case of reduced ejection fraction heart failure, but these drugs should be categorized as anti-arrhythmic drugs, and they will act at the level of phase 2 in case of fast channel fibers and phase 0 in case of the nodal fibers, that means SA node and AV node. And as those SA node and AV node are primarily responsible for pacemaker uh, cells, or they are generating action potentials, hence these calcium channel blockers are probably going to be more effective in supraventricular arrhythmias. Think about paroxysmal supraventricular arrhythmia or some problem of SA node from where it's generating more and more impulse. Those verapamil and diltiazem are going to be most effective. Phase 0 is basically under the control of autonomic nervous system. It is depending on the balance of or rather it's not the phase 0, resting membrane potential, or the phase 4. That means it's depending on the balance between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Parasympathetic is completely depending on acetylcholine and release of the potassiums. So, and it's causing, you know that those things are causing bradycardia. Acetylcholine is responsible for causing bradycardia, whereas the sympathetic dominance will cover it up and making the heart rate normal, and it is responsible for causing tachycardia. And as we all know, the sympathetic system is having, especially in the heart cells, are having beta 1 receptors. So, phase 4 action potential, or phase 4 the resting membrane potential is depending on the potassium channels as well as relative balance between the cholinergic system and the sympathetic system. And if you block sympathetic system by giving some kind of beta adrenergic receptor blockers, that is going to be effective at that particular phase. That means it is blocking conductivity, and it is also preventing this resting membrane potential, or rather the phase of diastolic depolarization. This indicates that beta blockers are definitely going to be classified under von Willebrand classification. It is there are two types of beta blockers. Most of the beta blockers are coming under the category of class 2. There is one exception which is having beta blocker like action, which is itself a beta blocker but also having action on phase 3, that means efflux of potassium, and hence it is categorized under phase 3. That drug is sotalol. So, beta blockers are primarily acting on the phase 4 action potential. Phase 4 of action potential in fast channel fibers. And then comes the phase 0. We all know in fast channel fibers, that means in ventricular problems, also a little bit of atrial problems. We are seeing these fast channel fibers, and depolarization is primarily depending on the entry of sodium. Whatever may be the state, it's a closed, open or inactivated state. Depending on this, you can subclassify these drugs, but primarily the drugs which are effective on ventricular arrhythmias are called sodium channel blockers. There are different drugs like quinidine, lignocaine, the drugs like freakenide. They are from different groups, and their subclassification is based on their relative action on the open and inactivated as well as closed channels. So, these group is called class 1. So, class 1 or class A. Class 1 rather is subclassified into class A, class B and class C, and they are all sodium channel blockers. So, sodium channel, the first one, the second one is, first one is sodium channel blocker, the second one is the beta blocker, and the fourth one is calcium channel blockers. Now, we just have missed one part, that is the phase 3 of action potential, and that is going to be described as the potassium channel blockers. And for the moment you remember one name, that is amiodarone. Now we can classify antiarrhythmic drugs on the basis of our knowledge in physiology into 4 types. Class 1 primarily on the acting on the first channel fibers, that is sodium channels. Phase 2 blockers, that means the plateau phase blockers are primarily the calcium channels, calcium channel blockers like verapamil, diltiazem, and beta blockers also playing some role. Beta blockers are primarily acting on resting membrane potential and diastolic depolarization, as well as it is having action on the conductivity of the cell. The calcium channel blockers, which are basically classified as the fourth group of drug, is basically acting on phase 2 as well as they are having action on the pacemaker generating cells, that means at the SA node and AV node. So both beta blockers and calcium channel blockers are responsible for decreasing conductivity. At the very beginning, at the initial slide, I have mentioned that the problem is either lying at the level of automaticity, that means the generation of impulse, or it is lying at the level of conductivity. So both calcium channel blockers and beta blockers will have role at the level of automaticity as well as at the level of conductivity. And calcium channel blockers are probably having more dominant role at the level of automaticity. So this is the way by which we can classify antiarrhythmic drugs, and this classification is known as von Williams-Singh classification. When we'll discuss the drugs individually, probably we'll discuss or going into the depth of this matter in a different way. Now, I think uh, this will suffice for today's discussion. If you have any query regarding the initial presentation of these thing, you may ask me after seeing this presentation in your link, and I will try to give you certain answers. And in the next class, I will probably start from here onwards the classification of antiarrhythmic drugs. But whatever I will discuss, it is based on the basic physiological phenomenon I have described related to myocyte, the cardiac cells, and its intervention at happening at the different levels with different form of medications. And whenever I will discuss the clinical problems, you will see these things are basically intrinsically related to each other. Thank you so much for the initial I think you have patiently hear this presentation for a while, and within few days I will come up with the next one, which is probably giving you the clinical exposure of arrhythmia, and probably at the end we'll discuss something about the antiarrhythmic drugs. So thank you so much once more.